Seeing my surprised face, Jason, the head of the sales department, said while trying to suppress his laughter, "Sorry, I totally forgot your existence." Everyone around us burst into laughter at his words. I dazedly stared at Jason. I was the person who planned a company trip, yet how come there was no plane ticket for me? "Sorry, but there's no seat for you. You might as well head back now." Watching Jason laughing his heart out, I regretted not taking care of the travel arrangements myself until the end. But it seemed that Jason had planned this all along. I was completely set up. On my way home from the airport, I sent an email to a certain person. They are probably on the plane with the rest of the sales department by now, so this email won't reach them immediately, but that's fine. I've been transferred a lot more than other employees. The reason is that they wanted me to have tough experiences and get to know various jobs within the company. Because of this, people including Jason started to see me as a liability that couldn't stick to any department, but it was all at the behest of a certain person. My name is Michael. I'm a company employee in my 40s. My parents divorced when I was a child, and I lived with my mother and grandmother in my mother's hometown. My mother was always busy with work, so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I came home from school. When I was doing my homework in the living room, my grandmother would bring me snacks and drinks. We would eat them together and chat about what happened at school that day or just have some light conversation. Among the snacks my grandmother prepared, my favorite was a certain brand of cookies. They were sweet, cinnamon, and had a satisfying crunch, and they were both our favorites. Sometimes my grandmother would buy cookies from different brands, but we always ended up saying that the usual ones were better. I loved spending the time with my grandmother. My mom was always busy with work, so she often came home late at night. But having my grandma around meant I never felt lonely, and I admired my mom for her hard work. I wanted to work hard like my mother and be kind to others like my grandmother when I grew up. And so, I grew up with those thoughts in mind. My mother really wanted me to go to college, although it wasn't easy. Consequently, I managed to graduate from a college thanks to scholarships and other programs. I was interested in business management, so I chose the subject as my major. After graduating, I got a job at the cookies manufacturer I always loved. Having an accounting certification, I was assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate. Being assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate is thought to be difficult, but it seems I was placed there because there happened to be an opening. Though I joined a company because I liked its products, I ended up in a department unrelated to them, but that's just how things turned out. I was placed in the accounting department, so I had no choice but to do my best there. Fortunately, the department was full of serious people, but my colleagues were sincere, and they made a comfortable place for me. The accounting department might have seemed stiff and gloomy from the outside, but Alex, my mentor, taught me the job carefully, and my boss, Michael, was kind. While learning the job, I even acquired a business accounting certification, but 4 years after joining, I was transferred to the product planning department. The atmosphere in the product planning department was completely different from the accounting department. It was filled with curious people, and there was always a buzz of conversation about recent societal trends and personal hobbies. I am not good at speaking. Even when I was struggling to find words, there were people who would understand what I wanted to say and draw it out from me. I was initially surprised by everyone's high communication skills. The job required creativity and analytical skills, so I became interested in the latest trends and learned about marketing tasks. Our team's proposal had finally been approved, and we were all celebrating. Then, I was transferred to the production management department. The motto of production management was to avoid stockouts without holding too much inventory. This job, which involved everything from procuring raw materials to shipping finished products, was appealing because it allowed me to be directly involved with my favorite snacks. Since this department required communication with many other departments, I was able to interact with people I had never dealt with before. It expanded my network. Just when I was starting to feel antsy about becoming a mid-level employee, possibly responsible for training juniors, I was transferred to the marketing department. I would often do market research while in the product planning department, but figuring out how to sell was the job of the marketing department. This department required management skills and the ability to see the big picture. It's been a while since I graduated from college, but I remember there was a marketing department within the business school I attended. Although it wasn't my major, I took some courses on marketing strategies. After all, management is considered a higher concept than marketing, and it's said that the goals of management and marketing are aligned. Marketing involves efforts directed towards customers, while management involves efforts considering the entire company's future. Touching on management-related subjects after such a long time, I found management studies challenging yet enjoyable. There was a great sense of accomplishment when the sales strategies I came up with increased the awareness of our products, and I wished to stay in this department where I could apply what I learned in business school. Around the time I turned 40, I was transferred to the sales department. This was my fourth time facing the challenges of adapting to a new department since joining the company. Like before, I believed that there would be new discoveries and joys in the sales department, but this time things didn't go as smoothly. On my first day in the new department, I arrived a bit earlier than usual. I always do this on the first day to greet everyone and organize my desk. When I got to the sales department, it seemed the boss hadn't arrived yet, so I asked someone nearby for my desk and started to get settled. However, even when the start time came, the boss was nowhere to be seen. I thought it was common for superiors to arrive early on the day a new person joins for introductions, but it seemed the head of this department was different. About 30 minutes after the start time, Jason, the department head, appeared with a coffee in hand. I immediately went to Jason's desk to greet him. "Good morning. My name is Michael, and I have been assigned to the sales department starting today. I look forward to working with you." Upon my greeting, Jason responded with "Oh," as if he had just remembered about me. "Nice to meet you. I'm Michael. You came from the marketing department, right?" Jason said this while looking over the documents presumably passed to him by HR. You've been bouncing around different departments, right? What's the deal? Were you being passed around as a burden?" He said this while frowning and roughly placing the documents down. I was taken aback by being called a burden to my face on our first meeting. Indeed, I have often been transferred every 3 to 4 years. Looking around, I saw many who had been in the same department for over 5 years, and I sometimes wondered why I was the only one frequently transferred. However, I always tried to do my best in every department I was assigned to. I never saw myself as a burden to the company. "Well, whatever. Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" Jason called out to everyone in the sales department as if nothing had happened. All eyes turned to me. "This is Michael, who joined the sales department today. He came from the marketing department, but it seems like he's been shuffled around a lot and couldn't fit in anywhere, making him somewhat of a burden. Tried to get along with him, but only to a certain extent." Laughter erupted at Jason's humorous introduction. And there, I realized I was completely out of my element. I was incredulous at the overtly malicious introduction and looked at Jason. He smirked at me with a nasty grin and ended the conversation with "That's the situation." I should have responded properly, but I was so shocked by the blatant hostility that I couldn't say a word. I've never been confrontational, but in all the departments I've been, people warmly welcomed me, and as we worked together, our relationships deepened gradually. First impressions are important. I should have countered Jason's words with a joke, but it was my mistake not to. They must have thought I wouldn't talk back no matter what. As expected, I became the target of Jason's harassment from that day on. The following days were gloomy. I've worked at this company for nearly 20 years, but I've never experienced anything like this. Given the laughter at Jason's remarks yesterday, it seemed best to assume there were no allies in this department. A mentor was assigned to teach me the ropes of the sales job, but perhaps because of Jason, there was a certain distance. Observing the department more closely, I noticed everyone seemed overly cautious around Jason. Although I was unfortunate to become Jason's target this time, I wondered if there were others in the department who had been targeted like me before. I casually asked Brandon, the senior mentor, "Why did the person before me leave?" Brandon hesitated with his words. "Why are you asking something like that?" "Well, I was just wondering if there was an issue with Jason." Upon hearing my words, Brandon glanced around and then whispered, "I feel bad for you, Michael, but once he's got his sights set on someone, it's over. The harassment continues until the person leaves. It seems Jason targets people like me who don't fight back and repeatedly harasses them. It might be his way of blowing off steam, but it's unbearable for those on the receiving end. So, my predecessor left because of that." Shh, Jason is watching. Brandon didn't say more, but his words were enough for me to understand what was happening in this department. Jason was originally the ace of the sales department and climbed up to the position of manager at a young age. However, being good at the job doesn't necessarily make someone a good boss. It seems the more overbearing Jason became, the more power he got. If you upset him, he'd lash out or relentlessly corner someone. He would push those he disliked to resign and favor those who flattered him, regardless of their abilities. This blurring of professional and personal boundaries seemed excessive, but it had been tolerated in this department. Now, he surrounded himself with favorite employees who obey him, effectively controlling the sales department. While avoiding Jason's gaze, I gathered information from Brandon. It appears I've become the target of a troublesome person. Just as I was getting used to the work in the sales department and the daily nagging from Jason. It seems that every year around this time, the sales department goes on a recreational trip. Some departments I had been in before had such events, and others didn't. It was my first company event in a while. One day, Jason suddenly called me over and tasked me with arranging the trip. "I really want to go to New York. Considering it's from here to New York, it might be quite expensive. Is that okay?" "That's your responsibility." Jason handed me a document with the schedule and budget. Even though he told me to figure it out, there's a limit to what can be done. If we wanted decent accommodations and meals, it might be difficult with this budget. "Understood. I'll give it a try." So, I scoured the internet for cost-effective accommodations and considered travel agency tours, somehow managing to come up with a New York trip plan within the budget. Juggling sales work and travel arrangements, I stayed late every day working on the trip plans. Since everyone's available dates were already set, I had to rush the hotel bookings. Popular cost-effective hotels needed to be booked quickly to avoid missing out on available rooms. When I submitted a plan and estimate to Jason, he just said them and carelessly placed it on a pile of documents. I was concerned that the hotel booking might fall through if it was left. I hesitantly spoke up to Jason. "What is it?" "The hotel is popular, and there's a chance it might get fully booked if we don't reserve soon." "What? Are you telling me to hurry up? Who do you think you are?" Jason glared at me, furrowing his brow. "I'm sorry, if an Olden or a lower-grade hotel is okay, then there's no rush. Sorry to bother you when you're busy." As I was about to leave, Jason stopped me. "Wait a minute," and I felt a sense of relief inside. "So, I just need to contact here to make the reservation?" Yes. They should recognize the name since we've already got a quote. It includes the flight tickets as well." I'll take care of the rest. You don't have to do anything more. I was surprised by Jason's unexpected offer. Really? You're going to handle it, Jason? Is there a problem? No, not at all. Thank you very much. I was puzzled but left the rest of the arrangements in Jason's hands and returned to my desk. However, I would come to regret letting Jason take over from it. On the day of the recreational trip, when I arrived at the meeting place, I saw Jason busy with his phone. He seemed to be sending a check and barcode to each member of the sales department one by one. Lately, checking in with a two-dimensional barcode instead of a paper ticket has become the norm. I moved forward to receive my ticket from Jason. All right, everyone, let's head to the boarding gate. Jason said this as if he couldn't see me standing right in front of him, addressing everyone else. I hadn't received the barcode yet. What? I should have sent it to everyone already. Jason made an exaggerated expression. What? Seeing my surprised face, Jason said while trying to hold back his laughter. Sorry, I totally forgot you were here. At Jason's words, everyone around us burst into laughter. I just stood there dazedly, looking at Jason. Sorry, but there's no seat for you. You had better head back now. Seeing Jason laughing, I regretted not handling the arrangements myself until the end. But it seems Jason had planned this from the start. I was completely set up. Understood. When I said that, Jason said bye and left with everyone towards the boarding gate. I stood there, watching their backs as they left, holding my travel bag and standing still for a while. On my way home from the airport, I sent an email to a certain person. That person is probably on the plane with the rest of the sales department by now, so the email won't reach them immediately, but that's fine. I never imagined I would be treated like this at a company I've worked at for nearly 20 years. Maybe I was too complacent, thinking I could handle this transfer as I had others in the past. In fact, my next transfer had been already decided. Though I had just arrived in the sales department, I was supposed to go to the strategic planning department after spending a few years here. I've been transferred far more than other employees. This was because they wanted me to gain tough experiences and learn about various jobs within the company. As a result, people, including Jason, saw me as a burden that couldn't be attached to any department, but it was all at the directive of a certain person. That person was Chairman Johnson, the company's founder. To be precise, he is currently the CEO and chairman, planning to hand over the CEO position to a subordinate soon. After a while, I received a call from Chairman Johnson, who seemed to have arrived at the destination. It was known that Chairman Johnson would accompany the sales department on the trip. Chairman Johnson and I were supposed to take different flights due to the different classes of seats and meet up at the destination. Chairman Johnson was surprised I wasn't there and called me directly. "What are you doing?" Despite being on the phone, I deeply apologized, hearing Chairman Johnson's disappointed voice. "I'm so sorry, Chairman Johnson. I never expected something like this to happen to me." Then, Chairman Johnson told me what had happened at the meeting place. Jason, who was in a good mood after setting me up, cheerfully greeted Chairman Johnson. When Chairman Johnson noticed I was missing, he said, "It seems the future president is not here." "What?" Jason was taken aback by his words. "Where's Michael? I heard he was the one planning this trip." I was the one who sent the email detailing the schedule for the recreational trip. However, after that, the responsibility was shifted from me to Jason. "I'm sorry, Chairman Johnson. Unfortunately, it seems Michael forgot to secure his own ticket and isn't here," Jason said to Chairman Johnson with a wry smile. "Michael, I can't believe he would make such a mistake." Seeing Chairman Johnson's puzzled face, Jason nervously asked, "I might have misheard, but what did you say a while ago? something about a successor. I said he's the successor president. Chairman Johnson stated firmly, and Jason asked again. President, whom are you referring to? After being asked repeatedly, Chairman Johnson said with a bit of irritation. I told you, Michael is the successor president. I've decided that. Do you have a problem with that? It's no wonder Jason was taken aback by those words. I was just as shocked when I first heard it. My encounter with Chairman Johnson dates back almost 20 years. At the time when he wasn't yet serving as chairman and was known as President Johnson. A year had passed since I was assigned to the accounting department as a new graduate, and I was finally getting comfortable with the daily tasks. Accounting tasks are highly specialized, making it difficult to grasp the whole picture, including the financial statements. You could manage your work without understanding how your tasks fit into the financial statements, as long as you knew what you were responsible for. At that time, I understood my tasks but didn't really know what everyone else was doing. During lunch, I was eating my boxed lunch at my desk, summarizing tasks and their owners in a notebook, and studying the financial statements. Though not asked by Brandon, I wanted to learn as much as possible about the department's work to get a better understanding of the overall picture. When everyone else went out for lunch, I was invited. However, I had already bought my lunch. I was alone in the office. To save energy, only a few lights were on during lunch, leaving the office dim as I scrutinized the financial statements. I looked up for a moment and thought I made eye contact with someone walking in the hallway. Though the face was unclear from my desk, I greeted them since they were a colleague. Surprisingly, the person entered the accounting office. The smiling man seemed familiar. Working hard even during lunch, I see. Thank you, just trying to learn as much as I can. I replied, a bit embarrassed, not sure who he was. You're the new guy, right? Settling in okay. Does he know about me? The man said so. Yes, I've managed to get the hang of my tasks, but understanding the whole picture is still challenging. Interesting. Did someone ask you to do this? He pondered for a moment after asking. No, no one asked, but I thought it'd be good to understand more than just my tasks, to eventually grasp the current situation and think about improvements. You're interested in fund management, aren't you? That's impressive. I didn't even understand the difference between financial statements and balance sheets when I started learning about management. He was surprised by my response. I shouldn't have said such things as a newcomer, but I was surprised he took me seriously. Were you aiming for the accounting department from the start? Not really. I graduated from the business school, but I joined because I liked our products, not specifically for accounting. Since I was in the business school, dealing with numbers was never a challenge for me. However, having joined my favorite confectionery manufacturer, I also have a desire to not just work with numbers but to be directly involved with the products one day. So, you're interested in planning or manufacturing too? Absolutely. I'm in accounting now, so I'm focusing here, but working directly with the products has always been my dream. I see. Maybe in about 3 years then. What? The man murmured something to himself, prompting me to ask again. Sorry, it's nothing. So, do you have any goals you are aiming for in the accounting department right now? Well, for now, I want to expand my knowledge of financial statements. I think I need to understand the processes that the accounting system automates. While accounting systems save time, I believe it's not good to rely on them entirely. Using an accounting system makes it easier to handle data and understand the flow of information, but getting a full grasp of the big picture is crucial for management accounting, which is beneficial for business management. Yes, I'd also like to try my hand at cost accounting. That's great. Product costing is vital for a business's lifeline. It's good to have that experience. As we were talking, the bell signaling on the end of lunch break rang. People began returning to the office, and while they seemed surprised to see the man, they greeted him as they passed. "See you around." With that, the man left with a smile. Then, Alex from the next desk asked me, "What were you talking to President Johnson about?" "What?" Surprised, I inadvertently raised my voice. It seemed that the familiar face I couldn't remember was from the company's website or brochures. I knew from our conversation that he was someone in a management position, but I never imagined he was President Johnson. Although we only talked about work that day, from then on, Chairman Johnson often visited the accounting department. Sometimes he spoke with Brandon, but he always made a point to stop by my desk afterward. We talked about my current work, the company at large, and even personal matters like family. After I knew it was Chairman Johnson, I was a bit more guarded in our conversations, but he told me, "We're going to be working together for a long time, so don't be so stiff." Even after I transferred from the accounting department to product planning and then to production management, I frequently crossed paths with Chairman Johnson. I always thought Chairman Johnson was just making rounds to listen to the employees in various departments, but a colleague in product planning mentioned that they started seeing him around more often after I arrived. Chairman Johnson, who used to be spotted only once or twice a year, was now a more common sight. This was mentioned not only in product planning but also after I moved to production management. I always found it strange, but I thought it was just a coincidence. However, I enjoyed talking with Chairman Johnson. If he was making an effort to see me, I was happy about it. Chairman Johnson once asked me, "What do you think is a necessary quality for a president?" "Maybe the ability to oversee the entire company and the world at large." I answered thoughtfully. "True, being able to have an overview is important, but you've been saying that since your first year, wanting to understand the entirety of the accounting department." "Oh, maybe I do have the makings of a president, just kidding." I joked, and Chairman Johnson laughed along, continuing the conversation. Knowledge in accounting or culture, specific skills needed for job execution can be learned later, but innate qualities are something you're born with. It's not easy to change the way you think, right? Indeed, some people are naturally positive, while others can't help but think negatively no matter how hard they try. Even when I make mistakes at work, I tend to bounce back relatively quickly instead of dwelling on them. The transfers that come every few years might leave some regrets, but the joy of learning new things outweighs them. I hadn't fully realized it. I have a naturally strong curiosity. Exactly. Not everyone is cut out for the job of president. I'm not really the best fit for it myself. I was more interested in research. Really? Before founding this company, you were doing food development research at a major confectionery manufacturer, right? Yes, exactly. So when I decided to start my own business, I realized I wasn't quite cut out for it, but I had to do it anyway. Building this company, which is well known and loved by many, must have required immense effort. Being a president requires various skills like dealing with crises, decision-making, and execution. Chairman Johnson might say he's not suited for the role, but reaching this point must have involved significant talent and hard work. What I think is, a president should never stop learning. Even if things are going well, they shouldn't be satisfied and should always look for improvements. That's the kind of person I want for the next president. Are you planning to retire, Chairman Johnson? Surprised by the talk of a successor, I asked Chairman Johnson. Not immediately, but succession is a common topic among presidents. Who will take over? You can't just hand over the company to someone who knows nothing, right? A successor needs to be properly groomed. The future of the company is at stake, so it can't be taken lightly. Right, that's why I've been worried. But then, I happened to meet someone who seemed suitable. But the next CEO. Chairman Johnson said this with a very pleased expression. That's great. By any chance, Mr. Johnson, were you visiting various departments to find a successor? Did I do something like that? From his puzzled look, it was clear that my assumption was wrong. Well, let's set that aside for now. What I was looking for was someone serious, curious, and always eager to learn. Someone who could adapt flexibly to new environments and communicate effectively, no matter where they are. Chairman Johnson listed the qualities he was looking for in a president. I pictured the faces of various people within the company. I wondered who exactly he was talking about. My judgment wasn't wrong after all. Chairman Johnson said, looking me straight in the eye. "It's you, Michael." Huh? I was stunned. I stood with my mouth agape, and Chairman Johnson smiled contentedly. "I would like you to be my successor." I was at a loss for words, and Chairman Johnson continued in a gentle tone. "Didn't you ever think it was strange that you were transferred every 3 or 4 years? Well, yes, but I thought maybe it just happened. That was because I wanted you to experience various departments and understand their specific work. Understanding the field is important for a president. I had come to think my frequent transfers as normal, but others might stay in the same department for 5 or 10 years. I never imagined such a reason behind my many transfers. Could it be that Mr. Johnson often came to see me because? Of course, I was concerned about how my successor was doing." Saying that, Chairman Johnson puffed out his chest. It felt like solving a long-standing mystery. "Wait, when did you start thinking of me that way?" At my question, Chairman Johnson looked nostalgic. "When I talked to the newcomer in the accounting department. I remember that time well. When I talked without even realizing he was the president. It was during my first year, on a lunch break in the accounting department. I had no idea that such a casual conversation would lead him to choose me as his successor. Wherever I was transferred, President Johnson would always visit and ask, 'How's it going here?' Having no memory of my father, I sometimes wondered if a father would watch over me like this. If Chairman Johnson chose me as his successor, there was no reason to refuse. Of course, I had my fears. The thought of possibly ruining the company Chairman Johnson built from scratch with just one wrong decision was terrifying. You don't have to rush. After gaining some more experience in other departments, you'll go to the strategic planning office to learn about management. Once you get there." Chairman Johnson, always calm, seemed happier than I had ever seen him. "I'm counting on you." This conversation happened before I came to the sales department. I was still in the marketing department at that time. Since then, Chairman Johnson became the CEO and chairman, and it was rumored within the company that he might hand over the presidency to a successor in a few years. I was transferred to the sales department and would go to the strategic planning office in a few years. I heard that Chairman Johnson had mentioned this during the trip. Jason was reportedly trembling with his face pale throughout the trip. The story distracted him during the trip, so he seemed not to even notice the beautiful scenery of New York, according to Chairman Johnson. The day after everyone returned from the trip, Jason and I were called in by Chairman Johnson. Though Chairman Johnson was surprised at my absence, he didn't delve too deeply into it during the trip. I couldn't give details over the phone, but I felt Chairman Johnson had a sense of what was going on from Jason's behavior. Not being strictly questioned during the trip seemed to have put Jason in a state of limbo, which was effective in its own way. He came to work the next day looking haggard. "So, first of all, I've mentioned that Michael will be the next president, but do you have any questions about that?" Why him, I mean?" Jason hesitantly started speaking. "Because he has the qualities needed. Haven't you noticed that as Michael's supervisor?" There was a sharp edge to the words directed at Jason. "I'm sorry, but the issue with the ticket was his mistake." "Are you still talking about that?" Chairman Johnson raised his voice, causing Jason to shrink back. "Michael, if you have something to say, feel free." That made me speak up. "I was the one who got the quote for the trip. but Jason insisted on handling the arrangements himself. On the day, I was told at the airport that there was no ticket for me. Telling the truth, I felt a sharp glare from Jason beside me. That's nonsense. I don't care if you're going to be president or whatever. You won't bring me down. Jason lashed out at me. Feeling somewhat exasperated, I turned to face Jason. Jason, isn't it about time you stopped? I'm aware of all the harassment you've inflicted on many people. It was clear from what colleagues had said that Jason hadn't just harassed me, but had been doing it to various people over time. There must be many who couldn't stand up to him and left. No one in the department dared to speak up against Jason because they were desperate to avoid trouble themselves. They turned a blind eye to those being harassed. Of course, such behavior is inexcusable, but the priority was to address the root of the problem. What are you talking about? Do you have any proof? There's no way you have any. Then, I placed a document in front of Jason. While everyone was on the trip, I contacted someone who used to work in the sales department. They had left, but they had kept a detailed diary. Jason began to tremble as he looked at the document. It contained detailed accounts of what Jason had said and done. When I looked into it, I found many others who had left. As soon as I mentioned Jason's name, they all were willing to help. I had gotten the contact information of these former employees from Brandon, who had taught me a lot about the job. He must have known he'd be in trouble if Jason found out, but he trusted me and shared the information. This can't be proof. I thought the diary might not be enough, so I asked the person in charge of the consultation service to dig up old emails. Here they are. As I handed over another document, Jason snatched it from my hand and roughly flipped through the pages. His hands shook, and he collapsed to his knees. This can't be. Chairman Johnson took the documents from Jason's hands and flipped through them. So, this is what you had been doing during the trip? Yes, since I didn't have a ticket. I shrugged and explained to Chairman Johnson. The strength to overcome adversity is also a quality of a president. Chairman Johnson smiled in satisfaction. Still, I bear some responsibility for not noticing the misconduct of my subordinate. I'm sorry for putting you through that. Chairman Johnson apologized to me. Please, don't say that, Chairman Johnson. Being able to apologize properly is also important for a president. He winked. After everything came to light, Jason was demoted and transferred to a different department. He was sent to a so-called sideline department and seems to be spending his days in gloom. To ensure he couldn't behave recklessly anymore, the person in charge of the company's grievance office keeps a close eye on him. After Jason left the sales department, my colleagues came to me one by one to apologize. They must have known their actions were wrong in their mind. I accepted the apologies, and fulfilling days in the sales department finally began. When I returned home after a long time, my grandmother and mother welcomed me. My mother is still energetic, but my grandmother is quite old now, so she tends to forget recent events quickly, though she surprisingly remembers things from the past well. Grandma, do you remember this? I handed her a familiar bag of rice crackers. Oh, it's my favorite, isn't it? That's right. Do you remember that I work at this company? Yes, of course. Mikey also loved these. I was so happy when I heard you got a job here. Though my grandmother has more absent-minded moments lately, her responses are still sharp. I've become the president of the company. My words surprised my grandmother. That must have been hard. Yes, it wasn't easy, but it was enjoyable. Despite the challenges, now that I'm president, I feel that everything has been a valuable experience. I still have a lot to learn as a president, but I'm doing my best in my own way, guided by Chairman Johnson. That's good. Mikey has always been such a hard worker, hasn't he? Being praised like a little child at my age makes me feel a bit shy. It's all thanks to you, Grandma. Thank you. As I expressed my gratitude, my grandmother smiled happily, with her eyes narrowed. The nostalgic smile of my grandmother I used to see while eating cookies as a child. These cookies and my grandmother's smile are my fundamental memories. Just thinking about them warms my heart. I hope to convey this warmth to many people through our products. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for that. The journey as a president has just begun.